Rock Talk doesn't want to be a security officer. The protostar is trapped in oscillating time, and Dreadnought deletes Janeway. See how you like it, Janeway. Remember when she said, delete the wife? Well, now she gets it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Our very special guest co-host, of course, Miss Bonnie Gordon.
That's me. Hello, everyone.
We are doing a review of Star Trek Prodigy Season 1, Episode 8, with another brilliant title, Time Amok, or Time Amok, if you want to try to really Star Trek it. Directed by, you may have to help me with this if you know, Bonnie, directed by Olga Ulanova and Sung Shin, written by Nikhil S. Jayaram. I think that's close.
You're asking me. I'm the worst at pronouncing names.
Okay.
I don't even pronounce your name right, Ryan. So
it's Rain.
No, I meant your last name. But I'm just kidding.
Everybody in the chat, let us know if that is correct, and if not, please correct us.
It sounded right, but again,
it felt good.
It felt good.
Felt good.
Go follow them all on
doing?
Twitter. They're wonderful. Good. Great. Timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly. It's all those anomalies just coming at us.
Mm-hmm. So, Cirroc, the reason the title is so radical is because it's the two words reversed of a original series episode, which was Amok Time. And this one is Time Amok, which works great because, amok, means to like wildly, whatever. And there's time going. It's basically like time is running amok.
Right.
I know I'm overthinking this, but when people come up with a great title, I'm just like, you're off to a great start for me.
Yeah. Is there a correlation between the original episode and this? Was it a time warping kind of scenario?
Well, it had a correlation more towards some Deep Space Nine episodes, at least to me. Like my first thought every time I see one of these kind of episodes, I think a little bit of like cause and effect, although that one is more of a time causality loop or something that Data says intelligently. I believe Don Crandall sent in Remember Me, which is kind of a shrinking universe kind of thing, but it was also interesting in that kind of way. I'll bring up what else he mentioned, but there was also a Voyager episode that was like this. What do you think, Bonnie? Did this remind you of anything?
It also reminded me a little bit of, not per se, but it also reminded me a little bit of the time loop episode in Discovery with Mud.
Right.
A little bit of that, like where it
madness
keeps
to make the sanest man go mad or something like that.
But I mean, it honestly, it has like similarities to certain Star Trek, familiar tropes that they've used in the past, but it's taking a whole new, I feel it's taking a whole new path for it, or it just took a whole new way of telling a time anomaly story. So I loved this episode. It was one of my favorites to read too. Actually, I was surprised I was in this one. I did not remember. I recorded scratch for it, but I don't think I recorded anything from the computer. And so when it said the vehicle replicator activated, I was like, oh, did I do that? I was just like,
that's me.
Oh, I was like, I made a cameo.
So one more thing is, it's Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad was the title of that Harry Mudd episode, which is a great one on Discovery.
That was a great one.
And the Voyager episode that I hadn't realized is called Shattered, which is probably the most similar with the description, because different parts of the Voyager ship are experiencing different parts of time. So that is probably the closest. And it feels like Prodigy is going to be influenced or borrow from Voyager more than any other, because they are, in that quadrant, and there's Janeway there's Chakotay. So it makes sense that we want it to remind us the the most of, a Voyager episode, I would think. And Cirroc Amok time in original series, I don't think it had anything to do with time. I believe Spock gets married. There's some things on some planet, there's a Vulcan lady, but I don't think it had anything to do with actual time. It was just like, it's time to do this or something like that, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember that one.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I watched the original series.
I don't know where they got the concept from. And, obviously you're doing time. So who hasn't done some kind of concept on time travel or time warping? It's a subject that's been well kind of thought out in movies and in books all throughout time. But I do like this episode, and I thought the way they described it was very it seemed like I was in class, like I was at school, like learning actually about the way they had the planets going around the sun essentially, and how each one goes around at a different speed. Mm-hmm. Really gave a good visualization for me for what these characters were experiencing. So I thought the breakdown of it was exceptional. I thought, wow, if I'm a kid and I'm learning this for the first time, they're explaining it in a way, like the way the planets go around, or they're explaining it in a way that I think is relatable and understandable for the audience. So I really like the breakdown of what they were experiencing. They also used the sine and cosine waves.
Yes.
Which was another chart that they kind of used to analyze, on the spectrum, who's farther away and closer to the timeline that we normally experience. Right. So I thought it was very exceptionally explained to the younger audience about the science of the story.
And they didn't dumb it down either, which I loved.
They definitely do not. Yeah.
It makes not just kids think, it makes adults think. Like the whole time, watching this episode, I feel like I'm learning something. And I hope kids, watch it and start asking questions and get interested in science and want to learn more about stuff like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or they don't understand it and they ask their parents. Mm-hmm. And their parents explain to them and they go, whoa, that's pretty cool, Mm-hmm. That I think it was something like a dampening sine wave or something. I think that's maybe how they explained it. But that's what worked for me when they mentioned that and they showed it. And I don't know if you guys have ever eaten at Denny's, but if you do, you have to do the Denny's pause after like a few bites. You kind of have to stop and be like, is this going to work with me? But I kind of did that with my brain for like a couple of seconds. They said, like the dampening sine wave. And I caught myself. I went, okay, got it. Yeah, I like it. Okay. But I had to think for a couple seconds and then it registered. And then I was fully on board. I thought it was really cool. I saw, the illustration really made it, easy for us to see because they put everybody on the different points, the highs and lows. Mm-hmm. I was very impressed by the science of this, not just the conceptualizing of it, but that like, wow, they are bold for a children's show. Like Bonnie's saying, they are really going after those kids and saying, we think you can figure this out, guys. We have faith in you. And we think that if you can't figure it out, you'll ask somebody that can.
Well, it's like the children watching, the young kids watching is Rock Talk in the scenario where, she doesn't understand and she doesn't, she's going to have to be the one that fixes the problem. And, I think a lot of kids, especially, in the school system, are in that scenario where they're given these problems. And if they don't fully understand it, they immediately kind of freak out and go like, I can't do it. And so it was so interesting to see how well they presented Rock Talk, like coming to terms with that. And actually, like, it shows that, they explained that she studied quantum physics and this, she had to go and study and learn all of these skills before she could actually do it. And the fact that she did it and she did it all on her own is awesome. I loved that they gave Rock Talk that moment of, the whole episode of her being like, I can't, it's too hard. I can't learn this. I can't get it. And by the end, she's the one who saves the day and knocks it out of the park.
That actress.
Yeah. I know. I always.
But she really killed it in this episode in particular.
She's so good. I love that kid. I loved how in the beginning, and this whole show really has been really pushing of them working together and becoming a crew and becoming a unit, a team. And that's been probably one of their biggest struggles. And this episode really focuses on that, they all had to work together, but they were all separated, completely isolated from each other. And one of them passing the next bit of information to the other, and just kind of passing it down. And they each had their own skills that they brought to it, like Zero with the schematics, Dal with his ingenuity. Thank you. Ingenuity. And then Gwen, of course, would have figured it out if she didn't get, attacked and all that fun stuff. But yeah, I just love that they really gave them each, like, they all used their own strengths, and they all used like a connection with each other, passing it down, like Jake and Pog figuring out the issue, Zero figuring out the schematic. It's like a little, like a breadcrumb trail that finally gave Rock Talk all of the not lessons, but all of everything that she needed to complete the task she had, and it was just her having to implicate it and make it happen. So anyway, I rambled, but yes, I loved that, and how in the beginning they just were not working together and couldn't figure out a simple riddle. They were just not communicating, not being a team, and this episode kind of forced them to really believe in themselves and each other.
We have to figure this out, because we can't ask Bonnie this question. But
the riddle?
Well, no, I was going to say,
okay,
what do we think Rock Talk is going to be? If she does not want to be security officer, that means I'm thinking that means that Gwen should probably eventually end up being security officer, or captain, and then Dal would maybe be security officer. But I think Gwen is clearly a great security officer, because she could whip anybody's whatever. But if Rock Talk doesn't want to be that, what can she? I mean, what is Zero? The helm pilot?
It seems, they all have such interesting talents. Obviously Jake and Pog is the engineer. That's been definitely determined. I mean, Zero's been at the helm for the most part, using their hands have been an issue. Right. But I honestly feel like, well, Zero, they that's tough. I know they've been at the helm for most of the show.
Right, so because I'm thinking, if Zero is not the science officer,
and the sick bay, they were in the sick bay with Gwen a lot,
then Rock Talk can be science officer. At this point, she's developing these skills to where she might say, you know what, I really enjoyed this, and I don't like being the security officer just because I'm big. I enjoy science, and so she might end up being the science officer. But I don't know. What do you think, Cirroc? Because it's tough to guess where they're going.
It's tough to guess where they're going. I think that's the beauty of it, is that they're figuring it out. I think Dal had a big moment in this episode where he said, we stole the ship, and kind of admitted and confessed to Janeway, like we're lying, And I thought that was a maturing moment for him too, because he could have continued to keep the lie up, but I felt like he was wanting to come clean and build a relationship on truth and honesty, as opposed to continue to lie to Janeway, who's clearly trying to do the best to teach them and to lead them. So I like that moment with Dal. I do think that Rock Talk has a chance to be the science officer, but now Rock Talk has the skills to be an engineer too, and a science officer, and probably a medical officer too. If that's what
life form so
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? We'll just make Rock Talk the whole crew. She's the best. And everyone knows she's my favorite. Yeah. And what
And
the
that to
hell
me-
does Murph do?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
Burps.
Yeah, that was such a great moment with Janeway saying like,
Yeah.
"You're the only hope for this entire crew," and then turns and sees Murph. Oh, never mind.
He's
Yeah, it was just
back.
like that moment of like face palm, like, well,
Yeah.
just gotta wait for the next explosion. Yeah.
You always know what you're going to get with Murph. Some kind of
Mhm.
bodily reaction is when they go. And then there's Murph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like this episode, and one of the things that I think was really special about this episode, because as I was watching it, and Rock Talk was having this breakdown where she was saying, I can't do this, and the pressure of the moment was too much for her to process at that time, and it was stressing her out. And I believe that that's the kind of anxiety a lot of children feel in life, going to school with pressures of whatever pressures that they feel. And I'm glad, because while I was watching, I said, well, this is a teaching moment. This is an opportunity for this episode to teach us, the audience, how to deal with this kind of emotion and this kind of behavior from a young person. And because we're all going to be able to, in some point or another in our lives, we may have an opportunity to reach out to a young person who feels this kind of anxiety and pressure. And I said, well, let's see if this show will continue to address that. And they did. And that's why I really love that they took advantage of that opportunity. And they addressed it by really, number one, they addressed it when Gwen decided to make the message and say, hey, Rock Talk, that was kind of a text message and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's prepared for you. I know you can do it. Don't worry. It was a really positive words of encouragement. It was also dealing with her situation with delicate gloves, being conscious of her fears and her anxiety. And I think that that's the way you're supposed to address that situation, instead of, doubling down and being forceful and yelling at somebody and saying, do it like this, and this is what I expect from you, and demanding or commanding them to do it. More explaining it and saying, this is what the situation is. Don't worry. With all of this, you have all these tools at your disposal. You have all these people that are going to help you. We believe in you, I think was another kind of
the whole crew
sentiment.
believes in you was one of the lines. And I think that was really important, because I feel like Rock Talk feels a little outside looking in, being the youngest as well as the strongest. Like, they use, it's almost like she's
and the ugliest. I'm just kidding. I just wanted to see Bonnie get hurt. She's like,
oh, how do I log
can
out
you
of here?
call this monster alien ugly?
How can you call my sweet little Rock Talk ugly?
You just don't understand her.
She's
beautiful.
Please. She's like a crystal prism. No, I feel like she's always felt out of place. Like her body and the way she looks is the complete opposite of her heart and her personality and this and that. So she's always felt a little not comfortable with herself. And she's not comfortable with herself. She's not comfortable with her skills. She's the youngest. She doesn't know a lot. She only knows one thing, which is living in the mines and being strong and being used as like a work mule, like a security, the muscle. And this episode lets her discover so much more about herself. What I also love about it is, especially in today's world with the pandemic, is Rock Talk is completely isolated by herself. Everyone else kind of has Janeway there to guide them in a way. Rock Talk is by herself, and it shows her isolation. It shows the depression that she goes through and the loneliness that she feels not having her friends around, how she's saying goodbye to them at night, even though she's by herself. And with the pandemic, so many people are isolated and feel so alone when, everyone's quarantining, and especially, people who live alone kind of feel that self-isolation, kind of feel off from having that personal connection with people. And I feel like showing this in a way that kids can understand it. And, you know, especially now with kids, a lot of their learning is through Zoom, and, you know, they can't go out and be with their friends. And a lot of the communication they have is through a computer screen, like Gwen talking to Rock Talk. I felt like it was just a nice parallel that wasn't like forced down our throats, but kind of gave just an inkling of kind of how some kids are letting the anxiety and the loneliness and the fear of what our world is right now, you know, how you can overcome it. And just because you are feeling alone doesn't mean that you are. Like all of them were still kind of with her and gave her the tools that she needed to succeed, even though she felt all alone and by herself. You know, they all believed in her and from afar, and she, you know, saved them all in the end. So I just love the parallel of, you know, with COVID happening. And I don't even think that was an intentional. I'm sure they had a script for this, you know, way before, you know, everyone became self-isolated, but I think it took a whole new meaning when they were probably animating, you know, showing like that despair of just, you know, with the food out. I know I went to a place, you know, last year where my room was just a mess, and I felt so overwhelmed and didn't want to clean, didn't want to take care of myself and my surroundings, and just kind of put a smile on my face and went about my day. But inside I was just like, I feel so alone and so isolated and not getting fulfilled in certain things when it comes to like social interaction. And I felt like that episode really hit home for that, especially for children who are kind of doing this for the first time, where they're having to learn from home and be alone and not get the interaction of school like they normally do.
Yeah, we certainly get it a lot more when we're watching this. Like, had we watched this episode 2 years ago, we'd be like, oh, she was alone, poor thing. But now, watching it now, we're all like, girl, I feel you.
Girl, we have been there. Like, I see those bowls on the floor. I know where you're at. Like, I got to do the dishes too. I get you. Yeah, it was that level of, oh God, you just felt her secludedness and just feeling so outside looking in, of just, you know, having no one around. Yeah.
I also want to point out that watching Rock Talk helped me again to appreciate the animators. When she was not speaking, when she was like listening to Janeway explain something, Rock Talk was way in the background and Janeway was in the foreground talking and blah, 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 blah. I started watching Rock Talk just for the animation of it. And I kind of like her cute, innocent eyes, you know, and the detail. And what I was noticing is how much they make sure to have her reacting, not just, you know, because I mean, back in the day, you guys know when we were watching cartoons, there was one person talking and the other person was just frozen.
Yeah. They would have like the blinking eyes.
Yeah.
You know,
the barely blink. But what she was doing was actually like reacting, and she'd look and she'd listen. And then when Janeway would grab something, she'd like look down and there was like quick twitching movements like, oh, what's this? What's that? And I was like, that is really good attention to detail, because that's what a real person would act like. And, you know, if you cut corners in animation, sometimes they notice, sometimes they don't. But it's great to see that they are cutting no corners and they're doing everything they can, even though clearly it's going to take much more time and much more money and much more energy to add this attention to detail. So I just want to give an additional kudos, like we do probably every week, but it looks great.
And the way they, you know, little things, especially with her character that you've noticed, like where she'll shift her weight on her feet, like almost like a child, you know, like little quirks, or, you know, just not feeling comfortable in your own body. Like she's a kid in this giant form, and she's, you know, she's insecure and innocent, and she just, the way they portray everyone's personal motions, like how Gwen reacts is a lot more grounded, and Shervers, you know, they each have their own distinct way of interacting and reacting, and it's so interesting even in the background just to see how different the characters are and how much they like during the scene with all the chaos in the holodeck when they're trying to solve the riddle. I mean, they're all doing their own thing, and it's, you know, you get to see a side of each one of them as they do it, you know, Jake and Paul eating, and everyone's just doing their own thing in their own little world. And you just see how different each character is, completely, you know, to make this misfit family of.
Well, I think that's part of what you talked about earlier, Bonnie, was when you said the teamwork. And I think that's what we saw earlier on in the episode. You said everybody was doing their own thing. Yeah. And then they took that idea, made everybody do their own thing in their own timeline, but yet they were working together using Janeway as the conduit to, you know, cross over these timelines. I thought that was brilliantly done. Great way to actually build teamwork. You know, I get this much done, you get that much done. And together we put it all together. I love the team building with this episode. I want to give a shout out to Kevin and Dan Hageman, who have just really knocked this show out of the park, in my opinion.
Runs all the time.
Yeah, they're hitting this out of the park. And
you're gonna call them the Bash Brothers pretty soon, right?
I mean,
it's like steroid era 1990s. Mark McGuire, Sammy Sosa going on.
They're killing the show. And I mean, literally, the adventure begins from when these opening credits start. I know you said this before, Ryan, but I love the music in this show. And like, it feels like I'm on a ride at an amusement park as soon as I hear it.
That's the first line in my notes is I get pumped every time for that song. As soon as it starts playing, I'm like, all right, here we go. I don't skip it. I don't want
Me neither.
I pump it up.
No. It's like I said, it's like the music sounds like a ride at a theme park. So it's like iconic to me. Like it's a small world when when you go on and
maybe not that ride. World. Maybe not that ride. Let's go. Let's move on to like Pirates of the Caribbean.
All right. But and then the open shot of the ship.
Yeah, Space Mountain. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, that's a good space. That's a good one. But the opening exterior shot of the ship was so awesome. They had the metallic kind of coating on the paint. I just thought, wow, this looks like. This looks really real. The animation was high level quality, and throughout this show, I feel that way when they show the engineer and the warp core, all of the stuff that they show. It's just well done, the details, but the exterior shots are like phenomenal to me. Like they're like ridiculous. And I would love to actually have a still from one of those exterior shots of the ship. That would be like a possession of mine that I would cherish, because I think the artists who are doing this are top notch.
I want to frame like every still frame. Every time I press pause, I'm like, I want to frame that. I want to frame that. It's like just have a wallpaper. It's just so iconically beautiful. What I also, I think a lot of people in the very beginning with the pilot and a lot of like action and this and that, a lot of people said, oh, I really like this, but it doesn't really feel like Star Trek. In the very beginning, I think that was a comment that a lot of people made, because it was again the exposition, introducing the characters. They didn't know anything about Starfleet or Star Trek. It was not Star Trek on purpose. They had to find the ship and learn about Starfleet and the universe and whatnot. And what I love is every episode that we've had so far, I think leading up from like episode 3 or 4, every episode just gets more and more Star Trek. I feel like this episode, especially, like, it has that, beginning, middle, end, A plot, B plot, like it's so Star Trek, and it's also so, it's such good storytelling. The fact that they put it all in 22 minutes is just incredible in itself. It's the writers.
I want to add to that what you're saying, when it didn't quite feel like Star Trek, and that was done deliberately. But I think they are approaching Star Trek from a different point of view, from a different angle, right? From the outside point of view, from an introductory angle. They're not, I like to look at it as this is the first series in the history of Star Trek that does not begin in the Federation. Even Voyager started in the Federation and ventured out.
Mm-hmm.
They are all in the Federation. This is the first one that's starts on the outside and is kind of heading towards it theoretically, right? So that's kind of what the storytelling and the heart of it feels like, is not this is Star Trek, but more like this is going towards Star Trek. This is like people discovering Star Trek. This is young minds being introduced to it. It's a very different perspective, and I think it works really well because it seems like they're seeking out or going towards Star Trek and getting more and more Star Trek every step of the way. Also, I wanted to point out that when they were doing a little screwdriver scene, a very super quick screwdriver scene, it was a Delta Shield head, like not Phillips head or flat. It wasn't Phillips or flathead, but when it went, bzz, like a little electric screwdriver, when they pulled it out, it was a little Star Trek symbol for the screwdriver head. And the other thing was,
I want screws. I want Starfleet screws.
They could do it. But also, Aaron J. Waltke a couple weeks ago, who wrote that awesome episode 6, he mentioned to us the snake game. He was going to have Dal playing a snake game, but it ended up being the game from Next Generation, whatever that was changed. And he mentioned how that was changed. But it was nice to see that in this episode, Janeway actually mentioned the snake game. She said, "You want to play some silly snake game or get building?" And I was like, hey, that's our own little personal Easter egg, because he mentioned it was taken out a couple episodes ago, but they finally kept it in this one. So I just wanted to point that out and give him the shout out that he deserves for being awesome.
Yeah, poor Dal. He's just he's got to get his, pardon my French, he's got to get his shit together. But, this was, I think, a great character development episode for Dal as well, because he does, he honestly, when you said when he finally came forward and says the truth of like how they stole the ship and everything, yes, it is nice that he's clearing the air and being truthful, but it also came from a place of like, I'm giving up, because the whole time that she's coaching them and getting them to work together was because you are Starfleet. You need to do this. This is what we do. This is how we learn. This is, this is what we do at the academy. You are cadets. And it was to him, he was like, no, we're not. Leave us alone. We're never going to be what you think we are. We're not a team. We're not a crew. We're not Starfleet. We stole the ship. Peace out. So it was almost like it came from a place of kind of like he's giving up and not. He basically got to the point where he didn't care anymore. And then he had to do a complete 180 as well, because, once she explained the situation, he realized everyone was depending on him to save the ship, because each time someone else gets the schematics or whatever that has to do it, it's down to you have to save everyone. So each person feels like they're the last hope, until Rock Talk is actually the last hope. But, it was just another piece of the puzzle. Like Janeway says, it's like you've solved the other piece of the puzzle. Now Gwen can take it and make what you've done and fix it. And so he, I think he had a nice turning point in his character as well, where he realized that he had to kind of step it up, or else, everyone's a goner.
Gwen had a nice line in this episode when she opened up the airlock and released Dreadlock.
Dreadnought.
Dreadlock. That's funny.
Grimlock.
Yes.
That's a transformer.
So yes, but she says, "Who's your master now?"
Yeah, that was so silly. I loved it.
It was silly, but it was like it was a release for her, because she keeps getting pounded on. And even, when Dreadnought said to her, like, you were the biggest mistake or something like that.
Yeah.
Like
your father's biggest mistake. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ouch. What about that's lemon juice on a wound?
Yeah. So that's already an open wound. And he just like jumped in there. And I thought, you know what? He deserves that. So I like there was a release there from Gwen. Like, I've been, so pissed off about what's been going on lately and how I've been treated by my dad and I've been treated by these people and the situation I'm in and the circumstance we're in. And she's got a bunch of, built up frustration and tension too. So like they're all dealing with issues of their own insecurities. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things that this episode and this whole show is doing. It's taking on the insecurities that children have, that adults have as well, that we all have.
I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. It's taking on those insecurities and dealing with them and just saying, hey, you can make it. You're better than this. You'll be okay. We'll work together. And I think those are the kinds of, ultimately, the principles that make Star Trek. So as they continue to go down that road, it will continue to become more Star Trek.
A lot of imposter syndrome on this episode of like, I'm not good enough. Right. I'm not smart enough. I can't do it. I'm not what you think I am, and I think we all feel that way in any industry that we're in, but I feel like, the whole, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not talented enough, I'm not this, that, and the other. If you just shut those voices out and just sit down and try, you can never know, you can accomplish so much. If all you got to do is try sometimes,
even
and if you fail, it's okay.
Even from the famous line from writers, which is, I always think that this is the script that I'm going to write where they're going to realize that I'm not good at this. That's that imposter
they're going to
syndrome.
figure me out. Yeah.
In every wake of life, we all think like, okay, this is the one. This is the day where they're going to realize that I'm an imposter.
I'm still waiting for them to go like, oh, the computer, we can get someone else.
That's been established.
Well, it's always it's that feeling of just like, am I bringing enough to the table? Am I enough? Am I doing enough? And that's in every job, every industry. But I think entertainment industry, we get kind of pummeled with it a little more than most. But rejection is fun, isn't it? But no, I feel like, especially seeing Rock Talk's journey of just trying and her succeeding in it is really important for kids to see, because she was so afraid. Yeah.
Not just her, but Dal was insecure and not sure of himself. When he's like, I can't build a warp matrix. I don't
even know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she and to Janeway's credit, she's like, no, you've got ingenuity. You can figure it out.
You may not have
all this. Yeah, you can figure it out. You can do it. And that's
they each had their own strengths that they got to use to get the next person the tools they needed.
Good character building, very good lessons for kids out there. And I would encourage, I'm actually going to try to get my daughter to start watching the show, because it's the kind of show I think she can learn from and kind of good introduction into the world of Star Trek for her.
We would love for you to keep us posted on that. Everybody wants to know how that works out.
Have her on the podcast.
We got 2 episodes left for right now until the remaining episodes of this season at the end of the year. I also want to point out very quickly, check this out. Where is it? Here we go. So we tweeted to Aaron J. Waltke last night, and he did respond. He said, nice knowing the snake game he told us about. When Janeway mentions it, got a nice smile from it, like personal Easter egg. And he responds, Dal is a gamer through and through. So
yeah.
Yep. And so everybody follow Aaron J. Waltke at Good Aaron. Great guy. We love him, and he gets the gamers. We also want to we're going to go to the free-for-all in just a second, a very special free-for-all. And we want to give a very special thanks to, we should have like a little horn that says, doo, 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 or, there we go. Oh, I felt like I was in an orchestra for a second there. Carmen, AKA Skillet, TJ, Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill, Victor Arucan, Yvette Blackmon, Homer Freezy out somewhere in New Yeezy, Eve England out in Wales, Dr. Marie Segal, Titus Mohler, Tim Baum, Darlena Marie, John Mann, Rex A. Wood, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Joe Balsarotti, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Ed Mower, Anil O. Polat, Anil K. Chander, Thomas Collings, Lawrence Neals, Isaac Stalk, and Ed Jarreau or Jarrett. We'll have to figure out how to pronounce that. And a super extreme, very special thanks to Dr. Susan V. Gruner. Let's hop on over to the free-for-all, and we'll be right back on the seventh rule. That's you, Mohamed.
Oh, you want me to introduce people? Or?
If you want.
Oh,
okay. Sorry. I thought you were going to say something. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the free-for-all from Seventh Rules coverage of Prodigy, starring Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
Ryan T. Husk.
Hey.
Also starring special guest Bonnie Gordon.
I am special. Hooray.
Also ever special, the amazing Melissa Longo.
Hi. Ooh, Cirroc.
Continuing the special, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri.
Very special.
Very special. The special Homer Frizzell from New York, also known as Homer Freezy from New Yeezy. And of course, were you going to say something? And of course, Dr. Marie Segal.
Hi.
Yay.
All right.
Who are
Very
you?
cool. Very awesome.
I'm Mohamed Noor. Nobody cares.
So we had Mohamed was starting us off because he had a couple fun nitpicks to throw at us, and we don't know where this is going, but we're ready for it.
Mhm.
So let me start by saying I love the episode. Oh my gosh, I actually watched it twice. Like once right when I got to work. Don't tell anybody. Nobody's watching. And also once over my lunch break too. I was like, I want to see this again. I had a question though. In the scene where Janeway was talking to Dal, and Dal was like lying on his bed, and he was messing with his little pad, something happened. I rewound and tried to play it a couple of times. Like she said, she was clearly frustrated at him, and then all of a sudden, he's looking at her saying, well, that was uncalled for. But there, like, I didn't see what she did. Like, she snapped her fingers, but like, did the pad disappear?
She snapped her fingers and it made the pad disappear. So obviously whatever he was holding was like a hologram. It was like a holographic game. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was almost like a hologram game where it was like a virtual reality.
Got
thing.
it. Did they show the pad disappear? Because like, I just saw the perspective of him holding it. Then all of a sudden it was him standing up. Like, I don't know what happened. Like, did she just turn off the game?
I think it was very quick, but I think it did disappear. If I remember.
So I just
I think she snapped her fingers and like it just disappeared. He immediately got up once it was it was gone.
Now that was my big question. I was like, what happened? Also, I definitely felt a little bit of like pain at the end of like, is there any long-term consequence to Rock Talk from having been alone for that long? That was very like
being isolated for that long.
However long it was.
Yeah, I mean,
enough to learn math. And
look, it's no secret that each and every one of us can benefit from therapy. And when you're on a Star Trek ship, please, everyone, no matter what your rank is, go see the counselor. And this is a perfect example of how each and every one of them should be going to a counselor, even though there is no counselor on the ship. Maybe that'll be Zero's role. Since he's telepathic, since we were trying to figure out earlier in the episode what everyone's role on the ship was. Maybe Zero is going to start being the ship's counselor. But no, I feel like poor thing. I mean, if I was Rock Talk, I would need therapy too. Yeah, poor sweet thing.
Well, let's hop over to Marie Segal because she was super excited about this episode and she wants to talk all about it.
I like the cutest title ever.
Yes.
Amok, 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 amok.
Oh my god, it was so cute. Okay, well, first of all, I love Prodigy so much. I'm so shocked by how much I like it. And I feel like I'm hearing that from everybody, even people who don't usually watch kid shows. But one thing I really loved was that, like, I think they said faded sine wave, like the graph that was like this. Okay, so usually like a sine wave, all the peaks are the same level. So like calling it faded, I love when Star Trek like sort of throws in these terms that really take like another level to think about. So it's like sine, cosine, tangent, and the sine wave is that shape. And obviously, like little kids watching the show won't know it, but I think the special thing about Star Trek is that then when you learn about it in school later on, it kind of like jumps out at you because you've heard that.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Before.
By the way, I just
And-
want to point out Anne Marie was bragging the other day that she got highest in her class at Calculus 3. So she knows a little something about math, right?
But yes. But I just thought that was such a cool little addition. And then also there were some other really fun things. Like I'm assuming you guys already talked about this, some kind of like fun of Star Trek.
No, we did not.
Oh, okay.
But this is
So I was
such
talking
good
to Aaron
stuff.
Walkie about this too on Twitter, because the second you hear Janeway say some kind of like tachyon storm, temporal anomaly or something, there's actually a YouTube video if you type in like Voyager some kind of, and it's 10.5 minutes of every time they say some kind of blah blah
Oh my
blah
gosh.
in Voyager. So then I like tweeted Aaron, I was like, oh my god, I love that you guys continued this tradition. He's like, always. And it's something like we're not done yet or something. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more of that. And then also
Some kind ofs.
it's so much fun. And then I also sort of really love that like montage where they're going through everybody like swirling through the galaxy. It felt like very Wizard of Ozzy. Like when everybody goes by Dorothy's window. And then lastly, did you guys cover the parable of like the fox and hen and grain, and how that was like such a fun, like it really reminded me of Resolutions, the historic Voyager episode where Chakotay builds Janeway a tub. And the way he like tells Janeway sort of that Janeway's like the center of his universe is by telling like a Native American parable about a hen, or not a hen, a fox and a scorpion. So it felt like it felt like a really fun callback to that scene. So I love that. I love everything they're doing.
I hope it makes kids think and them trying to actually solve the riddle. Like, you know,
man, that was a hard riddle.
Yeah, it's a fun one. I remember that one like from when I was younger. Like I think in school or something we had to do the riddle or something. But it's I hope kids actually like try and figure it out and like make it an activity. Parents, if you're watching with your kids, like make it an activity and try and figure out how you would solve this riddle.
And I can't believe we haven't seen like Trevis and Fodder yet, which is like the Voyager kids hologram that Naomi Wildman plays, and like apparently like everybody who grew up in the Federation played when they were a kid. So maybe that one will come up soon. But this was a really fun Resolutions callback.
Mm-hmm. So everybody check out that video. That's some kind of it's really like it's hilarious, and that is awesome. Good knowledge. And you saw we pulled it up where you tweeted to Aaron J. Waltke, and he responded saying, "We will never stop." By Grabthar's hammer. Well, TJ, your thoughts?
I enjoyed this episode very much, but of course I always do. I'm thinking about Rock Talk and all that she must have gone through, and that extended time period where she taught herself all of this stuff and even figured out how to fix the Janeway hologram. I thought that was pretty incredible and pretty awesome. But I have to tell you, it brought a tear to my eye when what was it? Oh, when I think it was when she got the message from Gwen and asked, "How are you?" And she said, "Lonely." And I was just like, oh.
I laughed so hard at her
because I remember, a few episodes back when they were on the murder planet, the thing that she really, really wanted was to be surrounded by friends, and that's like was her trap. And so I feel like her vulnerability was loneliness, and she had to face that.
Totally.
And she did, and she won. So I'm a big fan of Rock Talk, so I was watching Rock Talk.
We all are.
Great point about the murder planet and her being so happy to see the little bunnies, right? Like that's her thing. She just wants friends, and that's why she befriends Murph, right?
Yeah,
she
and that's
just
why she was
loves
like holding the fox and with the little animal. Yeah,
she's a little lover. That's all.
She's a little teddy bear.
I can't believe they all sleep in the same room, by the way. That was like one of the shockers of the episode.
When I saw that, I was like,
wait, what?
I was like, oh, that's so cute. Like, they don't want to be lonely. They all want to just be together. They're like, there's this giant ship where they could be so far apart. They're like, that sounds terrible.
So
Let's all just
cute.
hang out in the same room.
Yeah.
So she said goodnight to Doll. She was kind of like pointing at the end of the room. I'm assuming he's still in that other room, right? Because we saw
Oh,
his
yeah,
bed.
yeah.
Captain's
I
quarters.
think
Yeah.
he's in the other
Got
room.
it. Got it.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
All right. Melissa Longo has a really cool background and a tiny bit of sun creeping in.
Oh,
Yes.
How much did you love this?
I really, really enjoyed this episode, but I really love all of Prodigy. What a great show, and what great lessons they teach in each episode without hitting you over the head with these lessons. And it's so educational from when Janeway's talking about Apollo 13 to, you know,
Yeah.
all of
Yeah,
these
that was
sciencey technobabble, which is fantastic, and it's relatable. You know, it's relatable to kids and pseudoscientists alike. You know, so it's wonderful, and I too love Rock Talk, and I love that she's the first one to recognize that this crew is a family and how much she cherishes that family. It's wonderful to see. And I love how Janeway interacts with her. She's very nurturing and very encouraging and supportive, but she's not patronizing, and she recognizes that Rock Talk has intelligence, both emotionally and intellectually, and she's just there willing to help her learn and grow as a being, you know. And I like seeing Janeway's sentience as well. It's a callback to the EMH on Voyager, so it's neat to see her learn and grow in dealing with how to teach this crew who is not a Starfleet crew, and that's nice to see as well. And then there's one moment that reminded me of Deep Space Nine's Children of Time, when the anomaly swept through the ship and Janeway got split into 5 pieces, and the same thing happened with Kira when she got split into 2. For a second, I was like, oh my gosh, that kind of sounds like that. So great episode, lots to ingest. It's wonderful.
You know what that image of the wave going through remind me of in Next Generation, right?
Oh yeah,
Where they were getting clean.
Yep.
yeah.
The baryon
Yeah.
sweep in
Yes.
Starship Mine, which
Oh my God, the Hutch
Timbrous.
episode.
I can't help but always bring. Yeah, Hutch. Call me Hutch. Homer Freezy out somewhere in New Yeezy, who, by the way, has once said that Hutch was his favorite character. I don't know if that's still the case, but what did you think of this episode?
Oh, I don't recall saying that, Ryan. But when you're talking about the baryon sweep, I'm also thinking about this one where Beverly Crusher is there in her own world and everybody else is trying to get her back, and she
Remember me.
Yes, remember me.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I was thinking of that. I think I just want to say a couple things. One, the game that Doll is playing has something to do with snakes. And I think that'll probably come up later in some fashion. And then the other thing that I think will come up is that, you know, at the very end, we have this massive group hug. And Janeway, you can tell even though she's an EMH, she's an EMH,
Rating
but
hologram, yeah.
she's missing out. And you can tell that there are some feelings and stuff that are in there. And so I think that maybe there's going to be like this temptation thing or something that happens kind of like Data and the Borg Queen, or who knows.
Oh, with Chakotay?
No, Ed Marie, I didn't say that. You write
You're
your
not
own
JC.
fiction. Yeah. I loved it. If I know what the IMDb rating is, but I'm not going to say just in case somebody hasn't guessed it yet.
Have we
Also very jealous that Cirroc is going on the cruise.
There is still space on the ship, Homer.
I thought you were coming, Homer.
I was going to. I'll have to speak with someone and see if I can make it happen.
Cool.
I would like to, just have you dunk on me in basketball. That would be.
He's like, gladly.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Oh my
Very
gosh! Don't
nice.
pull Leonardo DiCaprio.
And dunk on me too, but I'm gonna take a charge if you do.
Yeah.
TJ also put in the chat, everybody, Snakes on a Starship. So that's the new movie coming out soon. So Bonnie, Cirroc, and I were trying to figure out if Rock Talk doesn't want to be clearly a security officer. My theory was that maybe Gwen might end up becoming the security officer because she clearly is qualified to do it, if not becoming the captain herself. What would you suggest or surmise that Rock Talk would end up being, if not chief of security? What do you guys think? Mm-hmm.
Science
morale
officer.
officer.
Enter your answers now.
Yeah. do.
No, I think they established that Gwen was communications. I don't know if they're going to keep on that track or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like the idea of now I'm blanking. The counselor.
Pop?
No,
Zero.
Hero?
yeah, Zero as counselor, but I think there has to be more to it as well. He's also the helmsman, so I think he's got enough going on, or
And
they have enough going on.
And he's always in the sick bay too, with Gwen, or he was in the sick bay, like with her. So
Yeah,
I feel like I don't know. He feels like I feel like he's going everywhere. Or I'm sorry, they. I keep.
He may.
Zero is like the data.
Sorry,
the
they
show.
may need the counselor. Medusa.
They,
That's it.
Medusan, yeah.
Mhm. Well,
They're one of my favorite characters too. They're so interesting.
That could be something that comes up too. Like if someone sees you, they're in big trouble.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they need a counselor.
what do you guys think of this?
The ship is messed up.
This the other thing I was thinking might be a possibility is that they might eventually meet and add a seventh crew member. And if that's the case, that one could end up being the security officer then, or
How about
something.
they learn how to
like that.
activate the EMH?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good idea, and I think it's probably going to be someone who's over the top, like virtually every other security officer that we've seen. I mean, you put Shax on that ship, and it's going to be interesting.
Top security.
Well, if you reprogram that android that they built with the ship replicator,
Oh my god,
You
that's
could-
scary.
That was terrifying.
you could reprogram that to be something else, but I don't know.
Yeah,
That
Dreadnought
was-
is a security
Oh my
officer,
gosh.
Cirroc.
And then at the very end, the light coming on in his eyeball, like Terminator. It's
Freaking
like,
Terminator, yeah.
like the best of both worlds.
They're so
Yeah.
good at making each episode kind of a standalone, but also giving little breadcrumbs of what's to come and the through plot as well. I just love that they're just it's so perfectly written.
Masterful
That
storytelling.
writing,
Yeah.
that writer's
Yeah.
room, man. They are just
Well, yeah.
On fire.
They give you
It's fantastic.
the standalone episode, but they also give you the serialized storyline that they're breaking out over the season. And I thought I thought the really good example of that was when Janeway had that discussion with Dreadnought inside of the main ops of that station of the ship. And she says something to the effect like, "You're the one that erased my memory. You're the one that did da."
yeah, I remember you. Yeah, you've boarded the ship
Yeah.
before. Yeah.
Right, and it was a great flashback, and they're like, "Oh, wait a second! So this is even continuing on. So we're going to get more of Janeway kind of remembering what happened and uncovering her own storyline." And
His answer there of "not exactly" was interesting, or close but not exactly. It's like, oh,
Nice tease, yeah.
yeah, And then another part was when the Chakotay voice override to cancel or terminate Janeway's program. I like when enter Chakotay code 2478 or something like that.
The fact that he knows the codes is disturbing.
Totally.
Yes, is disturbing.
Oh
So I did like those kind of gems for what is to come. The red light coming on in the eye of Dreadnought at the end, another kind of foreshadow for more to come. So yeah, this thing is really great. They brought back the Ferengi a little bit in this episode.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, giving them away.
And one other thing, before we go, I know we're short on time, but I just wanted to say that this episode also reminded me, or the experience that Rock Talk had reminded me of O'Brien's experience in the episode Hard Time.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? Eve
Very
England
nice.
just texted me this a few minutes ago and said the same
Really?
thing. She
When
said
you
hard
read
time
her
in her
text,
Great
do you
minds.
read it in her accent?
Yeah.
Mhm. I don't know, because I'm like so
Yes.
excited whenever I get a message from her. I never.
Yeah,
I'm just
so
like,
it's kind of like that. Like O'Brien had to go through 20 years of being
Yeah.
in the prison, and he was
Mhm.
affected by that, but it didn't really. It wasn't 20 years in our experience of it, just in
Right.
his mind. So to me, Rock Talk kind of had like a 20 years of
Yeah. In 10 minutes.
experience
Mhm.
in 10 minutes. So I did like
Interesting.
that concept.
But then did she age 10 minutes or did she age however long
been
that
wondering
was?
that.
Janeway addressed that. Janeway
She
said something
only-
like, "You're not much older, but you're much more mature," or something like
Yeah,
that.
Okay,
she,
so
did,
she-
she only
so she-
aged 10 minutes.
In her
but-
mind, she experienced that long time, but physically
And that
she
makes
did
sense
not.
because even stuff was moving slower, so it wasn't
Right.
like just time is slow and everything else is normal. So
Oh man,
That
can you
makes-
imagine her
makes
internet
sense.
when it's that slow? trying to learn quantum physics
to
on a
learn.
slow internet. She'd be like, I'm gonna die.
Love it. I love, Mohamed said in the chat earlier when we were talking about how not only does she save the crew, but she saves Janeway. And Mohamed said it only took 247 tries. I love that they mentioned that too, because it shows kids that she didn't just get it on the first try. Like
Right.
it shows how long she had to actually learn and study. A lot of kids who are saying, "Oh, I can't do it. I'm not smart enough. I can't." And they say, "Oh, just try." Sometimes you don't get it right on the first try, and it just shows how she didn't give up and she just kept going and doing it over and over. And I love that they just
So
threw that
good.
in there and didn't shove it down our throats, but it
Yeah.
was just like, hey, this is
Yeah.
important, kids.
Yeah.
They could be like,
lessons
It's-
learned.
it's-
Rock Talk learned it in
yeah,
like
it's
10 minutes. What's the big deal? So
But it's also a good lesson for the adults who are watching it, because we've become very impatient and
True.
Yep.
Well
needing
said.
that instant gratification. So it's good lesson for us all.
It's
Right.
true.
Good point.
That is
Good
very,
point.
very good point. Very good point.
And to Bonnie's point, it's good to point out to kids, that she got it by perseverance, not out of luck
Right.
or
Mhm.
Mhm.
talent
Right.
or skill necessarily. She just worked at it. She eventually got it. Great lessons. Anyway,
Ugh.
I guess we better run, everybody. But thank you all so much for joining us. And Bonnie, thank you again for joining
Thank
us
you.
and making us all sound a little cooler and smarter, making our budget sound great when you're like, hey, everybody, here I am. Like, wow.
Thank you.
So thank you, Melissa, Homer, TJ, Mohamed, Anne Marie, Cirroc, and I would like to thank you all. And for Mr. Aaron Eisenberg, the coolest guy of all time, we want to thank everybody for joining us. And until next time, always remember the seventh rule.